SurePoint Advisors is registered as an investment advisor with the state of New Jersey. Registration of an investment advisor does not imply any specific level of skill or training and does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by Securities and Exchange Commission or any state securities authority.
Welcome to another episode of SurePoint Advisors Financial Roll Call with James Fay. We are 10-8 in service. This is a podcast for law enforcement by law enforcement. I am James Fay. I'm a retired law enforcement officer and now a financial advisor with SurePoint Advisors. I'm focused on helping law enforcement officers make educated financial decisions that will directly affect their retirement. I truly believe that this podcast will help accomplish that. So today's episode is a value add. It's not necessarily about finance, but finance does play a role in the topic. So today we're going to have a special guest, Brian Gillespie. Brian is a retired law enforcement officer from a local agency here along the Jersey Shore. I can say that Brian is a friend. Our careers had paralleled each other. That shore town that he worked in was in the county that I worked in, so whether on or off duty, we crossed paths quite often. But Brian is currently the supervising mental health specialist at Rutgers University, and more specifically, the Cop2Cop program. For those of you that don't know, Cop2Cop is a 24-hour peer support program for New Jersey law enforcement officers and their families. Very, very important program that he oversees. So why is it a value add? With the upcoming holiday season and the stress that law enforcement officers endure throughout their careers, and more specifically since the onset of COVID, where a lot has changed and the social media has really used law enforcement as a punching bag, I thought it would be great to have Brian on and Brian speak to the Cop2Cop program and what they do and what they have to offer. So let's go to the interview with Brian that I was able to do yesterday. Welcome to another episode of SurePoint Advisors Financial Roll Call with James Fay. We are 10-8 in service. This is a podcast for law enforcement by law enforcement. Today, Brian Gillespie joins us on the podcast. Brian is a supervising mental health specialist at Rutgers University. Brian, how are you?
Doing well, Jimmy. How you been, bro?
Good, thanks. A little bit about the topic today. We're going to talk about Cop2Cop. Cop2Cop is a 24-hour peer support program for New Jersey law enforcement officers and their families. I think what a lot of people don't realize is that Rutgers University Behavioral Health Care developed Cop2Cop. And before we actually get into the history and the function of Cop2Cop, Brian, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your background and why you became a Cop2Cop representative?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on. I'm honored that you asked. We've known each other for quite a while and your family. So I'm glad I had the opportunity to jump onto this. I born and raised in Jersey City, 4 generations of law enforcement, moved down the shore, went in the Marine Corps, got out of the Marine Corps 4 years, started dispatching. Next thing I knew, I was a patrolman for the Manasquan Police Department. Retired from Manasquan in 2010. And from there, I took a variety of different jobs, kind of missed a job, but kind of glad I was out, but still kind of pulled back in. So in 2016, 2014, I started working for Rutgers University. I started doing security. And then I found this opportunity had come up in 2016 for Vets for Warriors, which was a 24/7 national peer support organization. And I never heard of anything like that before. And it was located out of Piscataway. And I thought, what a great organization, with my Marine Corps background and trying to help other Marines with the 22 a day that the veterans have to go through. So I worked there for about 8 months. After 8 months, I was promoted to supervisor for Vets for Warriors, and I stayed for about 2.5 years. In that call center, there was about 15 different programs that were all peer and culturally centered that were just amazing. I used to give the tours to everybody, and I used to open the door and I'd say, this is where the magic happens. So you had Vets for Warriors that was talking to veterans around the country, and the people answering the phone were veterans. Um, the vet to vet, we handled New Jersey veterans, also answered by New Jersey veterans. Then you had mom to mom, which was moms with special needs, handling, talking to parents that had special needs. You had caregiver to caregiver who had people that they dealt with Alzheimer's and dementia, and they were answering those type of calls. And you had NJEA aid. There were teachers handling teachers doing stuff. So it was just a great place where people were getting help. And it also held the suicide hotline or the Hope line throughout New Jersey. But then right across the way from us was Cop2Cop. I had known about Cop2Cop when I was a delegate years back in Manasquan. And I always look at those guys and I'd see them getting up and like heading out, like they were going to a hot call. And I kind of missed that. And I got to be friends with them and would talk to them frequently about the stuff that they provided. They would do stuff over the phone, but they would also go out and do critical incident stress management debriefings and do diffusings and be out at hot cases or things that had come up for officers that needed help and officers and their families. I left the call center after 2.5 years. I went and worked security for Wall High School. And I got the calling to come back. I went back and started working part-time. And as soon as I came back, they said, you're coming back here full-time, whether you know it or not. And for a second, couple of months later, I was off the position of supervisor. And I was glad to come back.
That's great. That's great insight and, very informative about all the different helplines that, Rutgers Behavioral Healthcare deals with out there. So, how about just a little history behind Cop2Cop? Maybe when it started or how it started.
Sure.
Just tell our listeners a little about that.
All goes by a woman named Cherie Castellano, who was married to a detective for the Morris County Prosecutor's Office. 1998, I believe they got the authorization to go ahead. In 99, they started the program, and they are the only legislated peer support helpline for police officers in the country. We are legislated through New Jersey Senate, and that's what makes us different from a lot of other programs. Cherie started it with a group, and then the next thing that happened was 9/11. So they kind of jumped right into the fire. They spent a lot of time up at the Port Authority in Jersey City, diffusing and debriefing, guys coming back from the pile, guys going back over to the pile. I know that I had ran into them a few times when the pipe bands would meet up on the roof.
Right.
And the time that I, got to see and talk to some of those people, and never really thought about what was going on with me when I was too worried about other people. And They were doing a great job up there.
Right. That's great. Definitely a welcomed resource in the law enforcement community. Obviously we thank you for your service for that. I thought it was interesting when I did call you to book this interview, you were going through your calendar and trying to squeeze me in, and we really do appreciate that you found the time to squeeze us in. But if you could just give the listeners a little bit about your function and your day-to-day, job, what you actually do on a day-to-day basis.
A little bit of everything. I answer the phones. I make the schedules. I hit my meetings. What the main thing is that I'm kind of like doing logistics and making sure everything's going to the right place, making sure that I have my guys on the phone, my guys and girls that are on the phone, making sure that the services rendered are up to par and what they need to be, making sure that they're getting the right type of services. We get a lot of calls that are administrative calls and making sure they're getting directed to the right place. And we get calls from all over the country asking us about our program and how we do it, and people would like to model after us. And just making sure that I'm available for anything that comes up. I know, as you know, we're getting ready for this meeting today and lining up some stuff, and I have other things going on. And then I get an email and we get a call about stuff that's going on with an officer's family today. And that's how quick things change, but that's how quick we jump into action as well. So.
Right. So can you explain to the listeners what kind of services Cop2Cop provides? I know you say answering the phones and stuff like that, but I think there's some other things during my research that I saw on the website that Cop2Cop provides as well.
Absolutely. When I used to work for Vets for Wars, I used to travel around the country and do some brief seminars or however you want to call it. And I would always ask them, who does your peer support? And they would say, what the heck is peer support? I never heard of that even when I was on the job. So peer support is a great function of talking to another that understands what you're talking about. Okay, culturally competent and someone that you can talk to that understands when you say, man, you have no idea. Well, no, bro, I do have an idea. I do get it. I did work those midnights. I
Right.
did have problems with this. I do understand what you're going through. So we'll take a call, and no matter what the call may be, the guy may be having marital problems, just doesn't want to talk to his boss, can't talk to his wife. Guy may be having some financial problems. Guy may be having problems at work, and he can't talk to anybody. So what he wants to do is he wants to talk to somebody that's 24/7 and confidential at that. We don't tell anybody about our phone calls. We're not bound to. We're all retired. We're not active duty. So everyone who works that line is a retired officer.
Right.
But unless you are looking to hurt yourself right then and there or hurt someone else, then we have to get involved. But what we do that is special is we do follow-up calls every week. Okay, if you
Great.
call me for the first time today, I'm going to assess you. Depending on what your situation is, I might put you in touch with a clinician, or I'll see what you need. You may be looking for some financial help. You may be looking for counselors in your area, whether it be marital or for PTSD issues. We get a lot of that. And we'll put you, depending on where you are, we'll find a couple of counselors and we'll provide you with the resources and referrals that you need for whatever it could be. Then we're going to follow up on that. And we're going to make sure that you're okay.
What a great support system. It's awesome. And you hit on a few times financial stress. And obviously this is a financial podcast for law enforcement. And, the reason I really started this is to maybe alleviate some of that stress that officers feel financially, making those financial decisions that they have to make. Maybe they're uneducated, and we could just provide that little bit of education to allow them to make a better decision financially. So, one of the questions to you would be, does financial stress, is it a factor? Does it add into a factor that leads officers to feeling hopeless or anxious? And I'm sure, obviously, you answered that already, that it does. So, it's a great point.
Absolutely. That is one of our top 10 is financial. And not even just the officer, maybe himself. It could be, I experienced, my wife was out of work for a while. And I'm sure a lot of guys experienced that with their spouse or maybe their children being out of work for a while, and they had to make do with whatever they did. With everything else that an officer has to deal with, especially what's going through with not just COVID, with the civil unrest and the BS that we have to put up with, add finances onto that, and you're not getting paid. Some bigger departments weren't, we're doing some stupid stuff. And then the guy's worrying about their health and have to worry about finances on top of that. It's never good. And it does grow. It does become overwhelming. And you know what? Wouldn't it be great to have something there for those guys that they could talk to someone that understands it and maybe put them in touch with someone?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I had a question on here. In your professional opinion, do you believe Cop2Cop is making a difference? I don't even have to ask that. I mean, anybody that's going to listen to this podcast will know the passion that you perceive and you give off when you're talking about this very topic. So again, there is great passion in your voice, and I can tell just by that it's definitely making a difference. Cop2Cop.
I got to tell you, Jimmy, one of my favorite sayings of all time, and we did an RPO video recently, and we all had a pick saying, and mine was, never underestimate the impact that you may have on someone else's life. We do that every day at Cop2Cop, whether it's just talking to a guy and making sure he's got good materials for his RPO training, or just talking to a guy and making sure that he's going to be okay, that he can help someone else, teach him breathing techniques, teach him what he needs to do to decompress. And then maybe finding out years later, and this has happened years later, that, you know what, if it wasn't for you, I would have taken my life. And it's happened to us. The stories that we hear from years later, months later, they're just amazing when we run into guys out in the field.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sure it makes you feel good about what you do. So, well, listen, law enforcement is a very tight-knit community, and we are always looking out for, our fellow brothers and sisters. So what are some of the signs we should look for that will let us know if our fellow officers are in distress and need assistance?
Thanks for bringing that up. We've recently, I guess it was March, we had the RPO, MRT RPO training in assistance with the AG's office. And it's just been amazing. And we have trained probably over 900 RPOs throughout the state of New Jersey. Each department has an RPO. Each county has MRTs, which are Master Resiliency Trainers. The RPO, for those who don't know, is the Resilience Program Officer. And they're trained to look for those kind of cues. If you see a guy who comes in, he's dressed to the nines every day, and for the last couple of days, he's wearing sweats and he hasn't shaved, there's something wrong. You know, you look back to when we were on a job, or when you hear the stories, this isn't a TV, but you know, you knew something was up with a guy, but no
Right.
one ever said anything because we didn't want that stigma. I'm never going to call that line. Hey, it's not my business. I don't care about him.
Right.
All it would have taken was somebody to say, "Is everything okay?"
Sure.
And you know what? You could have saved that guy, or you could help him stop from making bad decisions.
Sure. Sure.
We are our brother and sister's keepers,
Sure.
and we can take care of everyone on the road. We can stop people. We could put them in jail. We could do whatever we need to do. We could help families in distress, run into burning buildings. We could do whatever that needs to be done to help others. But the one thing we can't do sometimes is we can't help ourselves.
Right.
And we need help from others, whether we know it or not.
Right. And you know, just that simple question of is everything all right? You know, they might not have suicidal tendencies or suicidal thoughts, but you're right. It might save their job in general, because we go out and we are our own worst enemy. And then the next thing you know, we're losing our job. You know, a dream job that somebody wanted all their life. And, you know, for something very stupid, you know, they lose their job. So, you know,
Yep.
I think that was very impactful there. So
The days of not helping another are gone. With this RPO program, we've helped so many people, and people are reaching out saying, "I'm not sure if I need help or not, but let me tell you what I have going on." And we've gone out, and another thing that I didn't mention what Cop2Cop does are the debriefings and the diffusings for critical incidents that happen at the police department or things that come up. We've come and talked to specialized units that deal with major traumatic events all the time, that
Right.
over years and years are affected by it.
Right. Right. Interesting. So let me just ask you this, Brian, in closing, can you offer our law enforcement listeners who might need the services that Cop2Cop provides any advice or information?
Sure. Let me give you a quick rundown of some of the things that the most things that we hear all the time. It's depression, PTSD, anxiety, finances, work stress, marital, substance abuse, legal problems, suicidal ideations, medical and family issues. I think I know everyone I know as a police officer has run through at least one of them in their career, including myself. It's time to not live with it on your own. You know, we're here to help each other out, and it's time to break the stigma. It's time to talk to someone and get the help that we need. It doesn't make you a bad person. It's
Sure.
okay not to be okay.
Right.
You know, I look at it as you'll never walk alone as long as Cop2Cop is here.
Sure. That's great. It's great advice. And I know, you know, in the law enforcement community for years, you know, as a law enforcement officer, you didn't want to show any kink in your armor, right?
Right.
You know, some people need that help. So, listen, Brian, I really appreciate you being on the podcast and letting me interview you. This was extremely insightful, and I'm sure when it gets out to my listeners, hopefully they will get it out to their network, and this will really spread like wildfire, today's episode and today's podcast. So, again, I thank you for your time. I know you are busy, and you know, I appreciate you giving us your time to tell us all about Cop2Cop.
Hey, Jimmy, I appreciate it, brother. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing the right things. And if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. And that's the best part. It doesn't have to be for you. You could always just look out for your brother. So
Great. Really appreciate it, Brian.
take care, man.
Okay, I want to thank Brian for his time, and more importantly, his passion. It's evident that Brian is very passionate about what he does, giving back to the community that he came from, which is the law enforcement community. 10-11, prepare to copy. Let's go over a few takeaways from today's episode. 1, Cop2Cop, which is run by Rutgers University Behavioral Healthcare, is a 24-hour peer support program for law enforcement officers and their families. The job of a law enforcement officer is often stressful, demanding, and very dangerous at times. That lifestyle in and of itself affects the lives of officers, their spouses, their partners, and their friends. Brian went over a list of things that they hear while they're taking those calls at the call center. Depression, PTSD, anxiety, finance, work stress, marital stress, substance abuse, legal problems, suicidal tendencies, medical and family issues. That was a list of things that they hear all the time while answering those phones. Remember, this is a peer support program. What does that mean? That means that the volunteers that are answering the phones are all retired law enforcement officers. They've done the job. They understand your stress, and they can provide resources, guidance, and support for you or somebody you love. There was two things that Brian said during the interview that made the hair on my neck actually stand up. One was a saying that he uses. He says it's his favorite saying, and that was, never underestimate the impact that you may have on someone else's life. Well, you do that every day in the law enforcement profession. But more importantly, if you see something, say something. If you see a partner, a coworker, somebody in your family struggling with some sort of mental health issues, say something, because you never know when you're going to save somebody's life or change their life. The other thing he said that really hit home too, he said, it's okay not to be okay. Now that might be the biggest hurdle that law enforcement officers have to get over. Again, I said it in the interview as well. Law enforcement officers do not like to show kinks in their armor, right? We don't like to show our deficiencies. But like Brian said, it's okay not to be okay. If you need help, if you are feeling hopeless or anxious, you need to pick up the phone. Call Cop2Cop. Number is 1-866-267-2267. That should be in everybody's phone. Saved. This was a very powerful episode, and I wanted to put it out there for the holiday season. So please make sure you get this out to your law enforcement network. With that, thanks for listening to Short Point Advisors Financial Roll Call with James Fay. We'll be 10-7 out of service.